First off, my name is Bryan. I'm co-creator of Órbita Semanal. It's essentially a journaling and lifestyle project in conjunction with Marcelo, who's in charge of the video. And we're joined today by Peck. Bob Peck is a filmmaker, a student of comparative religion, the author of Original Sin is Alive, the host of Karmic Relief podcast. Please check that out if you haven't. And his work focuses around inner peace, compassionate action via the world mystics. As well as Madeline, who is a designer, a teacher, and a guide for heart-centered practices. Her vision is to empower others to uncover exactly what needs to be worked through, cleared, and healed through the tenet of radical compassion. She's also the co-founder of Sanctuary Homes, a regenerative social club based in Austin. And lastly, we have Juan and Rosemary. They are artists, they run the gallery, and they didn't give me a bio. Yeah, exactly. You know who they are. Beautiful. And so, I'll go ahead and get started. Essentially, how it's going to work is I'm going to ask these folks a couple questions. They'll get the chance to answer, and then after they've answered some questions, we'll kind of open it up to Q&A. The intention for this ultimately is for everybody to be involved, for us to all be able to ask questions and kind of further the conversation together. All right, and so without further ado, I'll start with Bob. Bob, what words of wisdom do you reflect on when facing challenges, and where did this wisdom originate from?
Well, first off, also thank you guys for coming. We're having a nice little intimate time at a psychedelic art gallery, so thank you all for coming out on Friday night. You mentioned challenges and kind of doomerism and skepticism. And there's a really great Tupac Shakur quote. He says, "When you hit a new level, prepare for a new devil." And that is societal. That's where the civilization is at right now. When Bryan and I were talking about this question, there's a famous guru that I really like. I like a bunch of them, but Neem Karoli Baba is Maharaji, who is Ram Dass's guru, and there's a great story of essentially Ram Dass running around his ashram, trying to help the Bangladeshi people who were in trouble. There was a looming famine. He was very anxious. He wanted to get a lot of work done and kind of help these people, and reminiscent of a variety of instances in civilization's history. And Maharaji kind of looked at it and said, "Don't you see it's all perfect?" And I think it's important to qualify that statement as well by saying that that's not to be dismissive of suffering or even be detached of suffering, but it's zooming out on this larger cosmic picture, on this cycles of hundreds of thousands of years. In Hindu metaphysics, they talk a lot about just this gigantic wheel that keeps spinning. And that's encouraging to me, just to kind of get a new perspective. I think we get really compartmentalized and hyper-focused on the challenge right in front of us. And I think also to Maharaji's credit, he was someone who laughed and cried and lived a very human experience. He, fed people and counseled them for decades. And so that attitude of, don't you see it's all perfect? It's something that comes from being present in the plane. It's not something that's this lofty, distant perspective.
Thank you. Beautiful. And another question I have for you then is, with the context that Bob, as most of you may know already, and I mentioned he wrote Original Sin is Alive. I have the benefit of being able to translate this with and share it with my mom into Spanish. And we've been having really beautiful conversations around essentially reincarnation, the chakras, and one question that comes from that is, what hope do you have in regard to, you wrote this book on spirituality, comes off as very Christian oriented, and then I think when most people have the experience of realize, oh, it's much more than this. But yeah, that experience of releasing something, not only in a book form but also on the internet. What hope do you have for these mediums such as the internet, books, and then sharing information as a whole?
Shout out to Bryan and Marcelo for translating my book. Its original sin is a lie. The Spanish translation is El pecado original es mentira. See? And that's most of what I can say of the Spanish book. It's coming really soon, and Bryan, really appreciate your question. I mean, I think just the fact that these guys are able to look at it with mom, look at it with grandma. Marcelo read my book when it was a GDoc, so shout out. So did Madeline. There's only a few the GDoc homies, and Marcelo told me years ago. He said, "You have to translate this into Spanish because I want my abuela to read it," which really touched my heart. And it's a real joy for me to do this kind of work in terms of uncovering mystic philosophy kind of for the modern age. There's a lot of people that are talking about spirituality on the internet and in books these days. But we are all, the whole point of our creative process is to share our own perspective, our own unique vantage point of these, our influences, of the texts that we love, the teachers we love. I'm a big fan of the mystics. Basically men and women throughout history have broken the veil in every continent, every time period. There's people that have, essentially transcended. There's all this language for what that actually means, but it's encouraging as hell that there is a way out and it's a way in. And so it's a real honor to make this kind of material. And in terms of your question, getting it out there, we had talked about my day job's at Meta, which is a paradoxical. We say we're the mystics in the machine, meditating there. And I was at a conference recently that said 40,000 reels are uploaded every second.
Wow.
Which astounded me. We're in this age of infinite content. There's just an immense, unimaginable amount of information. And so, that can either be discouraging or it can be empowering. For me, it's been a shift to say oh no, okay, I have a level of responsibility almost to share this kind of stuff in a sincere way, hopefully, in an accessible way and in a vulnerable way. So yeah, it's a real honor. Can we all add to the collective chorus?
So thank you. All right, and Madeline, I'll switch to you, and I'll ask you, how has deconstructing your Catholic upbringing and embracing ancestral traditions deepened your understanding of embodiment and its role in healing ourselves and the earth?
In 30 seconds.
It's interesting. My mom's side of the family is Buddhist and my father's side is Catholic. So to this day, I'm still trying to find a thread and bridge those two traditions and the wisdom across those two traditions. And that's why Bob's book, actually, shout out to Bob, was such a great resource. Everyone should check it out. But going to Catholic, I think, really gave me this construct to contemplate existence, reality, but at the same time, it perpetuated this limiting belief that I wasn't good enough, especially the human parts of me weren't good enough. And then on top of that, I was really disembodied for most of my life. My family came from Vietnam. My parents are refugees from the Vietnam War. So growing up with that intergenerational trauma, I actually did not want to be here. I spent most of my time growing up feeling really disconnected from my body as a trauma response. And when I finally woke up, I realized that the only way out is to actually go through. And when we actually look really deep into these parts of ourselves, to actually love those parts with compassion, with awareness, that allows us to heal, that allows us to have empathy for other people. It allows us to have the capacity to start healing these broken relationships with ourselves, with our family members, and ultimately with the earth. And that's why I believe that embodiment is one of the strongest pathways to liberation. You were talking a little bit earlier about ascension and awakening. A lot of times we ascribe those terms to these experiences where we're ascending out and upward outside of the body. And when I think about that term, we're actually descending back down into the body to experience everything in this moment, whether that be good, bad, ugly, because to your point, they're all perfect.
Thank you. Also, you're the co-founder of Sanctuary Homes, again, a regenerative social club. Why is regeneration important today, and how have you implemented regenerative practices in your day-to-day?
Yeah, I think regeneration is so important today because sustainability, being net zero, is not going to save our future. We're at a point now where we've pushed our planetary boundaries to the extreme. And even the term sustainability, the means, when you translate that, it means doing little to no harm. We're in a place now where I believe we need to change our mindsets, literally shift this mindset so that we are living here as humans, not consuming nature, but producing nature. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've been in a mindset where it's been so focused on overconsumption. And regenerative principles are not new. They come from ancient traditions. We're all remembering again. I'm certainly remembering again, especially from my Vietnamese heritage. And when I think about regeneration, we have some folks here. Do you guys want to sit down? Thank you. Yeah, when I think about the term regeneration, it is ever evolving. There are many applications for it. At Sanctuary Homes, we think about regeneration as doing no harm and honoring all relationships, all life, whether that be the animals, the plants, the soil, past, present, future, and obviously humans as well. And since moving back to Austin, the first thing that I'm doing right now, I'm originally from Texas, but I spent 10 years living in New York City. I'm actually relearning the entire local ecosystem. It's really important that we think as local as possible. In order to build a very resilient tapestry, we have to think about our neighbors, our community. So I'm literally researching right now, where does our trash go? There's literally only 3 trash sites here in Austin. 2 of them are actually completely full. There's 1 left. So that's kind of crazy to think about. There's water shortages. Where does our drinking water come from, right? So these are all the things that I'm doing personally right now as I'm moving back here.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll switch to you, Juan. And this is a pretty general question, but I think I'd love to hear where you go with it, which is what themes and messages do you aim to convey through your art and why?
Well, first off, thanks everyone for being here. I'm the curator and resident artist here at ArtUs. Quick introduction. What do I like? What are my messages to my work? The main things that come up for me are to reconnect with the natural world and rediscover a place within it, embrace the unknown, and recognize our interconnectedness. I think those are the primordial themes that I believe to be really important to convey. And to go back to Renaissance times, one of the things that set the art apart was that it was aimed to educate the world. It was aimed to promote love, wisdom, and imagination, and intellect. And those are things that propelled the Renaissance immensely, intellectually, and it was seeking to connect people on a higher level. And so I think that in this current world where we are right now, it's really important to circle back and realize that we're all human, and we need to transcend the division and realize that we are all one. And so my work is visionary in nature because I believe that visionary art that's spiritually based connects us to something bigger than ourselves.
That comes across to your work.
Yeah.
I don't see
And the second question for you is, how can we better contribute to the oneness, as you put it? You know, and also how can ancestral wisdom, such as plant medicine, aid us?
Well, I think many of you may know this by now, but you know, the psychedelic revolution is happening, especially here in Austin. You know, Austin is one of the cities right now. We're very lucky to be in a city where this is expanding very rapidly. And I think plant medicine is something that's been around for thousands of years. You know, all of our ancestors practiced this. You know, and so now we got disconnected from that. So I think psychedelics right now, the revolution is bringing us back to our roots. And I think one of the major components of that is the expansion of consciousness, which I realize is crucial in our era. I think you mentioned it, Madeline. The Industrial Revolution kind of made us numb us down. I think we became machines, you know, and I don't think that was the purpose. And I think that we forgot who we are connected to and our roots, and that there's more to this realm than that what the material world presents us. So I think to add to the collective, I think we all need to expand our consciousness, have an open mind, break the illusion of this programming that we've been in for the past 300 years. I think that is the most important thing for us to level up, is to cancel this enemy reflex that we've been on, through social media. I think that's amplified it tremendously. It's like we are not enemies, we're all humans. Let's go past beyond ethnicity, beyond gender, beyond sex, beyond religion. We're all humans. And plant medicine connects us to that source. So I think that, it's not for everyone, but I think if we have the open mind, you don't have to partake in the medicine. But if you understand the medicine, you understand the purpose of that, then you are connecting to the message.
I just wanted to chime in and say, that's very in alignment with the art in the gallery right now, because a lot of it is inspired by the tobacco plant or ayahuasca, different healing plants, chacarona, and I feel like, energetically the artwork is still translating that, even though we're not taking the substances. So just, it's, I forget where I was going with that, but I just wanted to point that out, that it's very on theme with the art and these communities with such a long history of knowing the power of the medicine and openly sharing it, they're sharing it with joy. It's not like, this is our thing and you can't have it. They recognize that this hope sucks, and they're sharing it even just through the experience of the art.
One more thing to add is that art is a powerful tool. Art is a catalyst for transformation, for healing. A lot of us should have a creative practice to integrate experiences, to integrate trauma, to heal ourselves. And that's why it's really important for art to have a mission, to have a purpose. And one of the things about the Renaissance that was so beautiful was that art had an intention, it had a mission, it had a purpose to connect us to love, to wisdom, to beauty, to find life desirable. I think that is something that not all the movements of art have had. The Renaissance, that's why we always go back to Renaissance times. And that's why we always go back to cities like Florence and Venice, because our cities never look the same. We always go back to visit because we find that beautiful. So what happened to the way that we build structures in cities? There's a quote that says, you are shaped by the structures you create. And so what does that say about our society with the buildings that we see nowadays, with the homes that are being built? The lack of beauty, I think that makes life dull. And so the purpose of art is to bring us back to that beauty of being alive and creating beautiful spaces for us to communicate. So art is a powerful tool that needs to be used intentionally. I think that with visionary art and the psychedelic movement, that's the thing that's happening again. We're finding that purpose and we're finding that beauty that we are expressing with one another.
Thank you. And for Rosemary, this is more personal. What's a change that you made in your life and that had a significant impact on you?
There are a lot of changes. No, I mean, there are a lot of changes I've made in my life, but I think something like that I thought about along the topic was, as a teenager, I had really bad anxiety. I had like very frequent anxiety attacks, and so I got on anxiety medication very early. And at the time, you know, I think it probably helped in some way. But I reached a certain point in my life where I realized that a lot of my anxieties were coming from past experiences that I hadn't looked at, I hadn't processed, and I was just trying to like push down by medicating myself. And I was kind of checking out of who I was. I mean, if you looked at my art like 12 years ago, you would be like, what? You know, it's a very different person. So I started doing other forms of healing, and I no longer experience anxiety attacks. Obviously, I get waves of anxiety like I think most of us do, but I have many tools in my toolbox now that I rely on. Art is a big part of it and was a big part of me processing heavy emotions. So I think like that's been one of the main things for me. It's just like helped me kind of like break away the layers of who I was, who I am, and then you know my art transformed, and I wouldn't go back.
Board right.
Thank you. And second question is, being the director of here at ArtUs, or being the director, what advice can you give to people who want to join in and support these spaces?
That's a good question. I feel like the biggest thing you can do is show up and just like share your energy. If you make art, showing your art in spaces like this. If you love to sing, you sing in places like this. And if you are seeing beauty and value in art, and you know it's not gonna like inhibit you from paying your bills, investing in art is huge. Even if it's just buying a print or a card from somebody, it can make a huge difference in an artist's life. And like just that little bit of energetic exchange adds up, and we can keep these places alive because, you know, unfortunately we live in a material world and we still have to pay, you know, utilities and stuff like that. But showing up and even telling people about it if you've had a great experience and recommending somebody else to come. But I was face painting the other night and people didn't know I was the director because I was face painting. But it was really cool because I got to meet people and they were like, oh, we love this place, we come here and we look forward to the opening. She did not know who I was. And she's like, yeah, I always bring my friends, and I thought that was so beautiful. And I was like, that's it. It's just like sharing, come and share. And it can be, you know, sometimes you gotta get yourself out of the house. So just even showing up for an hour makes a big difference. And hopefully you connect with somebody or get inspired. Yeah, that's it. listening.
Thank you.
And you guys have all showed up tonight. So
Yeah, y'all are like,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, and so coming back to Bob for the last round, you recently commented to me that we're all getting addicted to technology together. What do you think of our current relationship with technology, and how can mindfulness and mysticism help us?
Yeah, we were even talking about this while my son was watching the iPad. There was an eerie Black Mirror moment. But also, it was okay. You're in the gallery, and you could watch it for a second. No, I think just being aware, both mindfulness and mysticism are kind of those are my two philosophical loves. I think that the root of mystic philosophy is that this world is a dream. If you look at enough of Juan's paintings, you'll feel that. This plane of time and space it's still relatively real, but it's not absolutely real. And so the more that we walk around in our daily lives with that attitude, with that viewpoint, with that understanding, it does actually incrementally build the muscle. It builds this mental level of awareness. And so that translates, I think, into a secular view of mindfulness, which is, kind of, I think the worst of mindfulness is that it might be a diluted Buddhism, but I think the best of it is that it's a practical tool that helps us come back to the present. And so, in the technology land where we're all just stuck in staring at the screens, having that level of breath control, talk to Madeline about that, having that level of awareness and coming back to intentionality. I think that's been a theme tonight too. It is possible to break it. I think the other thing that we were talking about earlier was about how it's very easy to become pessimistic and cynical about just where everything's going in terms of technology addiction, for example. But then you have these brick phones and light phones that are popping up. My favorite example of the pendulum is tiny homes. Remember how, what happened was the 70s, 80s, 90s, everyone kept building bigger houses. Bigger and better and just McMansions, basically. McMansions were the theme of the 1900s. And then in the 2000s, so people basically said, we're sick of this. We don't need this. We're going to sell 80% of our space. We're going to live on 400 square feet in the middle of nowhere. And that's a movement. And so there's a beautiful, enduring quality of the human spirit. It's a pendulum when the extreme gets unbearable. And I think that the brakes are off right now a little bit in terms of the technology addiction, for example. And, I think the worst thing is depression among young people from the comparative aspects of social media. So everyone that is sincere and has a heartfelt-based practice, it's our time to do what we can to help people become free of this. But I refuse to be cynical because I know that there's been so many examples of us bouncing back.
I really love that, thank you. And lastly, in chapter 16 of Original Sin is a Lie,
Out now.
Titled Psychedelia, you write, and I quote, we must treat these powerful tools with a sacred reverence and be conscious of both the intention and the environment of psychedelic use. My question is, what other ways might we connect with our true self besides psychedelics?
I have to disclaimer, and I really agree with Juan that the psychedelic renaissance is mostly very positive. I think that there is a quality of psychedelic use that needs to be mitigated from a level of this isn't going to cure everything in everyone's mind for all time. This is a very useful tool, and it absolutely can show us a new, it breaks us out of our nets of our conditioning, right? Maharaji, back to Neem Karlagawa, he said, it's fine to do something like this. He famously tried one, but he said it's much better to become Christ than to visit him, which is a really good line on our psychedelics. So, yes, they're useful. I think that they're not for everyone, and they're also not going to solve it all. It's the solution is inside of everyone. That said, quieting the mind, meditation is really the foundational practice in spirituality. And I think for anyone, I'm sure there's a wide range of, beginner to advanced meditators in this crowd at the art gallery tonight in Austin, Texas. But what I'll say about anyone with any kind of hesitations around meditation, if you've tried it and it hasn't worked for you, try other styles. Richie Davidson, who's a professor of neuroscience, been studying meditation for 50 years, said meditation is like sports. There's a lot of different kinds, and so if you try one or two and it hasn't hit, or you think you can't do it, try another teacher, try another style, and you might find one that you like. It's really the core fundamental practice. I think in a very loud world, in a very noisy plane of time and space, it's really the main one to come back in. I'd say bonus practices are service, creativity, all of the above.
Thank you. All right, Madeline, returning to the theme of regeneration, how can we apply regeneration in our relationships and in our human experience?
Yeah, my background has been in design for almost 15 years, and so I would like to anchor regeneration to permaculture design. So the 3 pillars of permaculture include people care, earth care, and fair share. And the biggest thing that we can all do is to actually heal the soil. That's like the number one thing that scientists say that would make the hugest difference. 1, for our food, 2, for the plants that need to grow. There are so many resources here in Austin. Austin Organic Gardeners they offer a lot of free classes at Silver Botanical Gardens. There's Austin Permaculture Field as well. It's so easy to grow your own food in your backyard. You will not, people think it's really hard, but that is the first step. There's so much that you can do at home. And then it doesn't have to be that hard as well as just everyday, relationally. I think that's what your other question was about. One of the other principles of regeneration that I really like is leaving things better than you found it. So let's say Bob would let me borrow your car. Bob only has half a tank of gas. Let me give Bob's car back with a full tank. I'm leaving it better than how I found it. We're improving our relations, right? So it doesn't have to be rocket science. These are everyday things that we could do.
Thank you. And lastly, in the face of doomerism, what tools and considerations can help aid us?
Wow, there are so many tools. When I was contemplating on this question, there were 2 that came to mind, and they're pretty accessible. The first one is mindfulness. 1, bringing awareness and attention to all the feelings that we're feeling in this moment, whether that be fear, anger, anxiety. And the second thing that I really like is parts work. So parts work from the context of therapy comes from internal family systems. That's when we identify these parts of ourselves, which we all have 1,000 parts within us, right? When we bring emotions up, like fear or anxiety, we don't necessarily have to identify as them. Instead of saying, I am angry, we can say, hey, my inner child is angry. My heart has fear in it in this moment. And even bringing awareness to that, ascribing that part as anger or as fear, that allows us to advocate for those parts. We can speak for those parts rather than speaking from them, and that makes a whole lot of difference when we are choosing to heal ourselves as well.
Thank you. And then Juan, we recently spoke on discernment with what we're taking into our minds, our minds, hearts, and bodies. Why do you think it's important to question what we are consuming?
What is an important question we consume? I think we all should know that what we feed our brains, matters. It's not just what we eat, but what we watch. We're in the age of Aquarius now, right? And that means that we've transitioned from this hyper-religious era into a more humanitarian era. But esoteric teachings also say that in the tarot it represents the magician. And so we get to be our own magicians of our lives. So we can, it's like one spirit, it's just spirit into matter, really what it comes down to. I think, quantum physics right now is showing us, and a huge follower of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and so tapping into that unified field, change starts within, and then once you start really taking ownership of your life, you really start seeing things a little more clearly. So there's a lot of trash on social media, there's a lot of trash on the TV, there's a lot of trash on the radio. So we need to really see how that affects our behavior, how that affects our quality of life, our thoughts, And so it's really important for us to see through that, what's popular music, what is that teaching us, how is that making our children act, what TV shows are we watching, what is that teaching us, how is that serving the highest good. So I think it's really important to talk about those things and not just follow pop culture anymore. I think that's very outdated now. I think we should all be talking about what's good for us and not what's just because it's new doesn't mean it's better or that it's necessary for us to consume. We need to think about what future we want to leave behind for our children or the future generations. So it change starts within. But so I think that if we're tapping into what we have inside and what we want to see in the world, be the change we want to see in the world. So that starts all here. And then what's our output after that? So how are we using social media is important, because we're
Curation, not consumption.
Curation, not consumption. And that's something that, again, the Renaissance was doing, was intellectualism over materialism. They were not, art was serving as advertising, but it was advertising good, it was advertising beauty, wisdom. It wanted people to be smart, it wanted people to be wise, it wanted people to find beauty and to have intellectual conversations. Philosophy was huge, which means, the love for wisdom. So nowadays, we need to remember that it's all going to be bombarded with us, but it's up to us to decide to put a stop to it and not let it get into our fields anymore.
Yeah, thank you. The last question is in regards to this age of technology. What positive hope do you personally see coming out of this time?
Going back to social media, and maybe some of you guys are content creators. It's this is one thing one of my friends shared that really stuck with me recently was seeing social media as service media. So instead of being of service to the community at large. So when you're sharing, are you sharing for attention or are you sharing with intention? What are you sharing? And is it ego-based or does it come from the heart? And so are you trying to inspire others? Are you trying to connect? Or are you just seeking for some egotistical reward? So that goes back to the consumption. So what do you want to put out into the world, and how do you want to interact with people? The age of information is amazing. We get to connect and see how the entire world is operating. So it's an opportunity for us to curate the way we present ourselves digitally, which we have the power to do that. All these companies, they need our avatars, for them to continue functioning. So we can change it. We have the power to change these systems. But we need to have some level of responsibility to make that change happen.
Yeah, thank you. Insightful. And Rosemary, what is your vision for both the Creative Renaissance and the art gallery, the space that we're in?
Do you want me to give up my plans? No, I'm just kidding. My vision, I suppose, for the creative renaissance would be just for people to tap into their creativity more. Like, I know it sounds very basic, but if you feel called to do something, to make something, to do it, to have permission to do it, and then for it to be celebrated. And then kind of see where that leads. I'd like to see more funding for big art projects, and I know the city does what they can, but I'd love to see, even more. And then for the gallery,
what's the next exhibit?
the next exhibit is our studio members exhibit for the culture, which is a Juneteenth exhibit. So it will be all about artists. And then our next big one in the fall is going to be our mushroom exhibit, which is, we had Realms of Fungi last year, which was our biggest exhibit. And what I love about the fungi is that it really brings people together. Because people love mushrooms, they love culinary mushrooms, they love medicinal mushrooms, they love sustainability for mushrooms. I recently made a bowl out of mycelium, that was really cool. They're making fashion out of mushrooms now. So I'm really excited about that. And then, I suppose that it's already happening. Our last exhibit, prior to this one, we brought in a lot of visionary artists that I look up to from all across the United States. And that was a goal, to bring in more artists from outside of Austin. And also to bring in international art. So I was like, that's happening right now. So I would like to just continue to bring in more inspiring art to our city and meet people that inspire me in this city, and that we can gather here and it can become this hub of creative, visionary art where we can have inspiring conversations. We can talk about things like psychedelics without judgment, and we can talk about our creative practice, and that's what I would like to see.
I just want to add also, people who have the means to support the arts, like the Medici family back in Renaissance times. It's important to invest in art and help it find a mission, to reunite our culture again. Because I think that's one of the things that we're kind of lacking, especially in this city. There is money in the city. There's a lot of people with wealth that can support the arts, but we haven't seen any of that yet. And so
it's just hard to connect.
Right. Out of large
all the people, different things to offer, and
At a level that can make an impact and make a difference and shift us in the right direction. So an invitation.
I just thought of the word. It would be unify. That would be my next goal. My last goal is momentum, is create momentum. And just have the gallery kind of be like a train that's chugging along and I'm just on the ride. I'm still driving the train so we don't crash. But, so it's going on its own. But next, unify, there's all these pockets. I'd love to see it come together.
Yeah, and the city can only do so much with their funding.
Yeah. Thank you. And then last question for you, Rosemary, is in the context of collaboration, why is it important for us to have a shared vision when collaborating?
I feel like it is the first time I get the microphone, but having a shared vision is important so that we can actually make change happen. If we had a recipe and everybody was just putting in different ingredients, we wouldn't make the cake. You need to follow a recipe so we can make something of substance. So I feel like that is why collaboration is important. And get everybody, envisioning the same goal, because we're powerful together. really powerful when we unite our creative energy. So that we could use it wisely.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that's kind of connects with kind of how I want to close it out, which is kind of the intention of all of us being here and connecting with people. You, Rosemary, you told me, a lot of we don't have to agree on everything, and I think that's so important when we do decide to collaborate with other people to decide, like for example, I asked a question to people a lot lately, very carefully because it does stress. It's an instant way to stress someone out. What is your vision? It's like, what are you doing with your life? But no, it's more in the context of like, if you could describe your work in one sentence, what would it be? And so I asked that to Bob, and he goes, and I mean, it might have changed, but he said, I'm not going to quote it.
You're not dirty.
Thank you. You're not dirty. As simple as that, right? And I was like, wow, that really connects with my personal vision, if you will, about healing the modern lifestyle. And so it made so much sense when Bob and I collaborate or connect on things, because it's like we have a shared vision. We're not doing the same thing, but we're in the same direction. And that's helped me personally clarify with people that I meet, because I can say, hey, I really support what you're doing, but I just, right now, it just doesn't make sense to do something, right? So yeah, and I think that's kind of the power of all of us coming together, not just today, but in general, and sharing our positive vision for the world, because I think that's kind of the power that we have together to counter the doomerism, is us saying, hey, well, wouldn't it be better if we had a regenerative, communities, and we had these tools in place, and we were able to teach these to our parents, our kids, each other. And so that's my personal vision amongst us. And yeah, I want to again say thank you guys for coming. If we could give a round of applause for this, for everyone here on stage. Yeah, and it's not the end. I just want to make sure I got those applause. So I would love for anybody, feel free to, without obviously speaking over each other, if you have any questions, feel free to ask any of the panel speakers. Always takes up one person.
All the questions were answered.
I have a question for you. What do you see in common with a couple of painters, a regenerative viewer, and drunk wannabe writer?
That's a great question. Well, I guess, yeah, it connects back to the shared vision of connecting with people who personally, these folks are my friends, and they're also people whom I really admire. They have a lot of spiritual integrity. That's something I really care about. As well as being, the underlining would be in the creative community here in Austin. And again, we don't have to do the same thing. I think that's really powerful. But we're all kind of pointing in the same direction, if you will. So, yeah, that's why I see connecting all of us. You said earlier, like, service. I really admire, I think from everyone here, I've learned in one way or another, an act of service, a way to better serve, so, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Madeline, you've talked about the regenerative social club, but like, what do you all do there?
Yeah.
What do you just socialize?
Thanks for asking.
What's it
Yeah, we socialize our Yeah, our mission is to create these bridges back to ancient systems of culture, care, community, and we do that through our transformational programs, which are rooted in art, healing, and nature. Our long-term vision is to actually open a community center or co-op where we can have a very cross-collaborative platform where artists, healers, gardeners all have a place to create based on these principles for a better future.
You listed some great resources also right there. Is that on your website?
It's not, but
It's coming. Okay.
Juan, do you believe in destiny?
I think it goes both ways. You either write your destiny or it's going to be written for you. So you take ownership of your destiny. That's what I believe in. And I also wanted to share, because we live in a very special time. So like, I grew up in Colombia, South American, and there is a prophecy by the people in the Americas. It goes all the way up to the Hopi in Mexico, and it's the prophecy of the eagle and the condor. Some of you may be familiar with it. But it kind of correlates with our timeline here, kind of centered around the Renaissance time, where the eagle people, or the masculine energy, like science, technology, industry, almost wiped out the condor people, which is the spiritual people, the feminine, the intuition. And so we've seen that with past 500 years, how that's happening, colonialism and everything. So the prophecy says that 500 years later, which is now, in the 90s, it started, there's the opportunity for the eagle and condor to fly together and raise consciousness, and so we are at a time at a crossroads now where like, we can make that happen, but it's up to us. It is up to us to activate that. And so it's a really good time to have these conversations, to get people talking about things that matter, deep conversations, like we're done with superficiality. Like we need to ask the hard questions and not look at each other as enemies, but we're all humans. Now there's only one race, the human race. That's all of us together in the same planet, It's weird. Like, I grew up in Colombia and I never felt I'm Colombian and I'm proud to be a Colombian. Like, I'm a citizen of the world. It just goes beyond that. And I have no sentimentalism, for my country or anything like that. This is a very foreign concept for me because like I see the world as one. And so that prophecy is beautiful because like we're at that time now where we can make the change. And there's another prophecy with the Lakota people that's just shared. A friend of mine just shared this with me about the white buffalo. Yeah, and there was a Yellowstone, a white buffalo was born, and according to the prophecy, yeah, just recently, like that happened just now, and that means that better times are coming. But we need to do something about the way we treat our earth, or nothing's gonna happen. And so, like here we are. What are we gonna do about it?
I just thought Madeline had said something a while back about kind of the way we treat ourselves is a representation of like a reflection of how we treat our planet. So if we treat ourselves better with more compassion, then we're going to start treating the world better with more compassion and better. And I also just wanted to say before we close, there's actually a lot of information about the artwork. We were lucky enough to partner with the Center for Shamanic Exchange and Education, which is a nonprofit. And so if anybody has any questions about the art, I'm happy to answer it to the best of my ability. The show is closing this Sunday, and we're hosting a ceremonial concert in the gallery. We're going to move the walls. It's going to be in the center. It's from 7 to 10. It's a ticketed event. Michelle, who's here, is actually going to sing with Mary Oliver and Sam Wagner. It's going to be really beautiful. I just had to get that in before we can keep talking about.
I want to ask a question.
Oh yeah.
Okay, since the energy is here. And I'm so sorry to make this about me because I'm going to use myself as like a guinea pig. But did you say you worked at Meta?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not very important.
You're very important.
I'm not very important.
No, that's fine. But we're talking about a couple of things, which is like the doomerism. Is that what you guys are called it? I've never heard that word before. But I feel like that because I'm a content creator for about 12 years. That has been since my awakening, since I first imbibed ayahuasca, went to a transformational festival and met somebody who was a workshop participant who really like knew me. And I was like, I want to teach, and I became a yoga teacher and college professor, blah, 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 my journey, yada, yada. And then through this time frame of the last 12 years, this influencer consciousness has like come up. And now on a very karmic level, it could just be my guides and my walk and whatever, but like that whole influencer-ness like is not my jam. And like so much that I took mushrooms like in January and they were like, stop trying to be a coach because you're in Austin and you live. But I did so well for 3 years. For 3 years, I kicked ass on Instagram and made money and did all these things, bought my sound bowls, and now I'm a wizard with that. It's like so cool. However, my relationship with social media right now has been over the years. Of course, I fluctuated with like complete like sternness. I'm gonna do my art, and then what the thing that like rubs me the wrong way is if I post anything sexy, if my breasts are in the camera, if I'm argumentative, those posts literally get seen by people. And when I am talking about rom-doms or singing a prayer, but basically I have this very like soft girl like energy as much as I'm like here's whatever. But if I'm like fierce and I have this very like deep longing to not sacrifice, to show up a certain way in order to gain traction, and therefore what comes out of it in my ego with their human self is this like repeated energy. And I right now am like really having a deep prayer in the spirit because it's like, because my business has run that way in the last 6 months. It hasn't been running because the algorithm's changed and wants to pay for it now. So I'm losing faith. My doomerism is happening really deeply because I don't know if I need to extricate myself from that because I'm losing power to the game, and I'm just, it hasn't been played for 12 years that I've become a spiritual, whatever you want to call me, teacher, author, whatever it is that I do, coach, healer. So I'm wondering, like, how do I make an impact and like learn how to be accessible for the world and not get so defeated when like I really bring my heart online and make others seem to be like, like I just don't know how to do that. So, do you want to know? Thank you. And you don't have to have an answer, but that's what I wanted to voice.
It sounds like you're saying I need to show more skin.
Or anger. Like I posted about how cancel culture is an activism, and that went so wide, but I don't want to show up angry. I want to perpetuate love, and like that does not sell.
Yeah, it's a deep question. I have been posting, my wife told me to start posting on TikTok about 2 years ago. And I just did, the book was about to come out. I spent 5 years writing this book, 15 years reading Peck's books. And the first time I downloaded TikTok, like 4 years ago, all the videos were kids saying, when finals are coming up, like, and I was like, oh, this is not for me. And then 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I downloaded it and they were like, when your second chakra is blocked, you need to do it. Okay, all right, now it's changed. And so I started then, I did the 30-day challenge of like trying one every day and with zero emotional attachment whatsoever. I talked exactly your diary. It wasn't content strategy, it was here's Dogen on Zen Buddhism, here's, whatever I was calling to my reading or experience or something from the book. And about day 14, one of them got out there. And I was like, okay, there is something. I think generally speaking, like mystic philosophy, like ArtUs, like, and a couple others, Dr. Rick Diamond's here, who's one of my favorite video makers on the internet right now. And maybe Rick can add to it. It's like, this isn't for everybody. It's always going to be a little bit niche, and that's okay. Like, people that are going to watch, the Cowboys of Buffalo Wild Wings, like, they don't care about what Dogen says about this present moment. And just accepting that that's okay, like, accepting that, what I try to do is just, like, see it as, this is an opportunity to be as sincere as possible. How can I be as detached as possible at the same time? So it's not easy, but that's what I would.
Done a lot of acting.
I wanted to say that, like, when I took over as director, I really was not making a lot of art. And so I didn't have a lot of content because even though I could share old stuff, I was like, I don't want to share unless it's new. But I noticed because I was just in the real world, I was meeting so many more people. And that so it kind of shifted for me for a while. It was more of an in-person interaction. But I still think that it's just having something on your social media for people to see, like when they go there. It's like a little, like our little portfolio. But that it's even if it's not seen right now, maybe it'll be seen later. And I don't, but yeah, it was not realistic for me to be able to share all the time. And I think I post 5 times in a year, and that used to not be that way.
Answer the question.
Finding Kevin.
I had a question about what Juan was saying about the prophecy of like a condor and eagle. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So, from what I see is like usually if there's an action, there's a equal and opposite reaction, right?
Right.
Yeah. But so how do we like list off and get them to slide together, you know, instead of like wait, what was it, the eagle that was attacking the condor?
The eagle has been working out the condor, yeah.
Okay, so instead of the condor attacking the eagle, how do we get them like to take off and fight against it?
Well, like, one of the things that I, through my art, that I seek to convey is our interconnectedness, right? Like, we need to stop seeing ourselves as separate. As I was saying, one race, one love. We're all humans. We're all in this together. And participating in community like we are right now, having conversations, like getting to the bottom of things, not seeing each other as enemies. I think that's how we start. Because, you know, what's done is done. But we need to heal these ancestral wounds. You know, it's like what happened hundreds of years ago. It's neither my fault than anyone's fault. Just the children of the mess. You know, so we need to get past that. And once we get past that, we can move forward. And there's a lot of people still stuck there in reaction, being angry, which it's understandable, but we need to get past that. If we want to move forward, if we want to achieve higher consciousness, get to a better place globally, we need to heal all this mess from the past hundreds of years, you know, and then move forward together. Because it's gonna take all of us. It's gonna take a whole village. You know, not one single person, not one single government is gonna be able to do that. It's gonna have to be all of us changing our mindset, changing our perception, and expanding the way that we see things and the way to really visualizing how we want to see our future and healing it. Because I think that's where it starts to realize.
What's an action?
Yeah, to add to the prophecy, if you guys are interested, you can go to earthelders.org. There are 5 indigenous elders that have been elected across these indigenous cultures in South America to uphold these values. So they talk a lot about the work that they do. In this prophecy, the eagle represents the masculine, the mind, industrialization, and oftentimes North America. The condor represents South America, our intuition, the feminine parts of us, our emotions. And when I think about the eagle and the condor flying together, we're in a place where I believe they call it Pachikuchi, which is a period of transition, of terrible times. And that's because the condor is bracing in the wind to fly next to the eagle. And we can only do that when we merge our mind and our hearts. Right now, we are in a place where over the last 200 years, because of industrialization, we are treating ourselves like a machine, when in fact, we need to actually connect the mind and the heart, and there's such a big delta there. The more that we can heal ourselves within, the easier it becomes for the collective to also heal. I believe that everything starts again. So much what you're saying.
Yeah.
That just made me think about, there's an author, Drew Melchizedek. He wrote The Flower of Life 1 and 2. He also has a book, what's the one? It's about the heart. Anyway, it's a very short book, but he walks you through this meditation where you actually go into your heart. And Juan and I did it together, and it was a wild sensation because I felt like my heart actually didn't want to let me in. Like, it was like, no. And I was like, this is weird, you know, like, you live here, like, you know, like, you belong to me. But like, I didn't want to go in, and then I realized like how, even though I feel like I'm a loving person, maybe I had built a little armor around it. And so I think that one of us, that's just one practice that you could do to drop into your heart, which I really liked. It was a very simple meditation. But yeah, I think like that's just another like tangible way physically that we can drop into our heart. And that yeah, honoring our emotions, honoring other people's emotions, giving them space. Yeah, we're not machines. We can't always work 40 hours a week. I want a day off when I get my period. I need to go to work. I need to rest.
Her hormonal cycles and 4 cycles. Men, their hormones change every 24 hours. So everything right now is oriented towards the masculine, and the masculine has overpowered the feminine for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that psychedelics are helping. It's sort of softening, it's, you know, the breaking down those layers that, you know, that hard exterior is really breaking it down. And it's one of the things that, like, as a man, you know, because it's been ruled by men for so long, I guess, making us get in touch back to our feminine side, you know. And so that is, I think that's going to be a huge help once, you know, we achieve a level where the majority of us men have conquered that, you know. Because that is the main driver, you know. There's still a lot of work to do, but mushrooms are helping. And then, you know, speak of regeneration, you know, mushrooms really are saving the world, you know, like there's mushrooms are eating plastic, you know, so it's, things are happening. We just need to invest in the things that matter.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah. And the book swap is just an open, take a book, leave a book.
Yeah, please stick around until 10. We have drinks, the bathrooms through the hall, you don't already know. And yeah, thank you guys so much for being here.
We have artist studios upstairs, and we have like an installation in the staircase, the galleries, please feel free to walk.